Hello, I'm Steve Ambra, Executive Director of ConcordTV.
Hey,
Not really.
No, oh, no, you got us there. I thought you took my job for a second, Steve.
No, actually, I'm Chair of the Board, and I'm in conversation today with Josh Hardy, who is the real Executive Director. Josh, hello.
Hey,
again.
and thanks, Steve. Yeah, thanks for being with us, and I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. So I have two questions I think that'll sort of lead us into our conversation. First of all, who is or what is ConcordTV?
Yeah.
And second, in these difficult, troubled times of funding, what is the funding model for ConcordTV?
Yeah.
So what is ConcordTV? And I would say one of the things we can invite our viewers and their community to look at is our website. And if you would go to our vision statement says that we strive to be a better connected and informed greater Concord community. And really, what does that mean? Who are we? Who is ConcordTV? And then I would say that we are ConcordTV.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
And we have so many constituent parts of ConcordTV. And I was going to ask you to begin with, share a little bit of what goes into ConcordTV and who we serve, what our mission is.
Yeah, well, I love that you mentioned the vision about just a better connected and informed community. And our mission is to build community through media. So our belief is that holistically, that media doesn't have to be divisive, and it doesn't have to be picking sides. It doesn't have to be something that drives us apart. That media actually can help show what's happening in Concord that builds us together as a stronger community. In terms of, Steve, who we are as an organization, most Concord residents at this point have heard of ConcordTV. When I do kind of informal polling, a lot of people know who we are in terms of name recognition.
Right.
And then they go, well, aren't you part of this organization, or you're a department of this or this? So just to put it really plainly for people, we are our own 501c3 nonprofit, which was formed in the late 90s. We're now in our 26th year of operation. We have a board of directors. So Steve is a terrific board chair, and we have a group of, I think the current number is 8, nonprofit or volunteer board of directors. So you're not shareholders, there's no stakeholders, we're not privately owned, there's no commercial incentive for us or motivation. With that said, to make clear to folks that we are not part of the NPR model, we're not part of the PBS model, we're not part of a C-SPAN model, that we are completely separate, and that we are what's considered a public access station, which is these organizations that are public access stations are just like us, locally driven, locally controlled. And across New Hampshire, Steve, and across the country, there are thousands of public access stations that all shape themselves to serve the unique needs of their particular community. So there's no cookie cutter model.
What does it mean to really be non-commercial and apolitical? How does that fit into the model of ConcordTV?
Yeah. It's a great question, and I maybe would frame that in comparing with for-profit model media, which sells commercials and advertising and have to be very careful with separating their editorial board from commercial interests, and sometimes there are instances where those can bleed over. And then also, I think we see a trend in commercial media where they're driven by a model of needing click-through, what we call click-throughs or page views, or in the old days, selling papers, or you need people to pick up the paper, and we are not motivated by that. We want people to see our content, but we aren't looking at, well, if we don't hit this certain number of view counts, then we don't make our ad revenue goals. We don't generate ads. We were just talking, I always call out Matt, who's our tech director, because we were having a conversation about a local commercial media outlet that sends out targeted email blasts that are basically an advertiser pays for access to their email list, and then it goes out. We don't do anything like that. We never have, and we never will. So I think you are able to build trust with people that there are no other motives.
We're not trying to sell you anything.
Exactly, right. No, we aren't, and we work with a lot of independent producers, which we can talk about later on. And that none of us our purpose is to sell product or to meet certain quotas. And that's not a dig at our for-profit media outlets. And I did want to also point out, Steve, that with everything going on with NPR, PBS, Corporation for Public Broadcasting, it's important to make the distinction. We are not affiliated with those organizations, and we're not funded through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. However, I wanted to say, and anyone I talk to, I say the same thing, we stand in solidarity with them and support of the public media world, and that the role that a NHPR and a New Hampshire PBS, that they serve to a statewide audience, is crucial and irreplaceable. And so that the funding, Corporation for Public Broadcasting is losing $1.1 billion, a lot of which had already been appropriated and is now being pulled back. And so NHPR just had a piece on their morning show yesterday talking about 6% of NHPR's funding comes from the CPR or PB, Corporation for Public Broadcasting. So that's a huge gap for them. So we stand in solidarity. We are not directly impacted. But when I make that differentiation, I don't think you or I mean to claim anything like we're better than them or anything. Like, those are our friends in the media who serve a vital role.
So that gets to the question. Is there another model? Is there a different model? Or what is our model of funding? What is qualitatively different from about us than as opposed to anyone else?
Yeah. It's a very unique funding model, and it's one that was really important that all of our board members, all of our staff, our advocates in the community understand. So a lot of the people watching, I hope, are people who are familiar with us, know ConcordTV, but maybe have wondered the same exact thing. How are you funded? And it's really through what are called cable franchise fees. So as you know, Steve, there are two cable operators in Concord, Comcast Xfinity and BreezeLine. BreezeLine is the newer one of the two. These cable operators enter into what's called a franchise agreement with the city, the municipality, so the city of Concord, where up to 5% of their cable revenues are paid to the city of Concord. And the intent when this was created way back in 1984 as part of the Cable Communications Act. I say way back, maybe it's not way back, but more recent than we would think. But the purpose of it, a couple dual purposes, was these cable companies coming in, and they were using and are using the telephone poles. They're running lines. They're using public, city property. And so basically they're paying back into a system that helps for the upkeep of that system. But part two of that in practice is these cable channels came in producing a lot of international and national. Remember how many cable channels there were? You had MTV 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 probably, ESPN 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the concept was that this funding model could help pay for local community media, but it would be up to each town and city to figure out, how much revenue that's collected will go to that operation. Some cities determined it would be part of their school district. Some cities determined it would be part of their city government. And in our case, being a nonprofit, there are a lot who have adopted the nonprofit model, which to me is the most effective way to do it, in my opinion. And so when ConcordTV was formed in the late 90s, how much time do we have here? Really, it's the history of ConcordTV. I'll try to give it in brief summary, but that none of the cable franchise fees during the 80s and 90s were going towards community media. The city would collect it, and there really wasn't an organization. There was no plan for what to do with it other than the general fund. So a group of residents got together, formed a nonprofit, formed a board of directors, formed bylaws, all the, registered with the IRS and the Secretary of State's office, and formed, at that point, CCTV, which we don't go by CCTV anymore. But we were also very late to the game. I think when the Cable Communications Act came out in the mid-'80s, you sort of saw public access starting to pop up they're the classic clips of Bernie Sanders in like the early 90s on
Right,
Burlington, public access. And we were a little late to the game in Concord, but we're here and we exist.
But who are we serving? How do we serve?
Yeah.
How do we reach people? How do people reach us?
Yep.
And what kind of content do we provide?
Yeah, so the main driver since our founding has been those cable access channels. In the
Right.
public access world, we refer to it as PEG media. You have a public channel, an education channel, and a government channel. And so anyone who has Comcast or BreezeLine, you have those channels on your channel guide where you can go, and it's not on demand, but we have 24/7 programming, which I'm proud to say, like, since the early days of Concord TV, we don't re-air programming as often as you would think, that we find new programs. And ballpark, it's probably 80 to 85% locally sourced content. We do syndicate a few national shows and things that are sent to us from other, places. But for the most part, the programming on those channels is locally created. You ask what type of content?
Right.
City government meetings. So the classic ones are city council, zoning board, planning board. We cover all of those meetings.
And how do we know that we have viewers who are looking at these?
There are no Nielsen ratings for local
Right.
cable access. So I always, I forget who it was. It might have been Jim Boulay or someone who had said, I'll be at the grocery store, and this is him saying this, I'll be at the grocery store and someone says, hey Jim, your tie was crooked when you were on the city council meeting the other night.
Right.
And so it's sort of those anecdotal things that people will go, I recognize you from TV or something like that. That people say, I recognize you from TV. What is great in the digital age is pretty much all of our content now, Steve, is going onto YouTube, which we've set up the Concord TV YouTube channel, the City of Concord YouTube channel, and the Concord School District YouTube. And so all the programming that is created for those channels are going online. That way we can track analytics. This episode we're doing, we're going to see when it has 4 million views, Steve, probably for all the wrong reasons.
My tie is not crooked.
Something viral, something viral or something like that. But we know, and this might even be a little creepy, but we know how long they watched for. We know what type of device they were watching on. So, for instance, a lot of viewership shifting to mobile viewing, which is not a new trend. That's been over the past decade. We're able to track what time people are the most active. We know this with our newsletter we send out. We know this with our digital content. So that has helped us also, Steve, with sponsorships, which maybe we can circle back to, that I'm able to tell a sponsor, this is how many times it was viewed. And so that helps us a lot.
So any surprises for you? Like you find that we have a greater viewership, let's say at 1 o'clock in the morning, anything?
Yeah. I'll tell you, Steve, certain content has been surprising, or we're always fighting what we refer to as the algorithm, whether it's through Facebook or Google, YouTube, in terms of what takes off and what doesn't. The hope is that videos that are interesting to Concord residents will do great numbers. A couple examples are, my colleague Mike produced a video a few years ago with over at the Old North Cemetery. So with Jill, who's the cemetery supervisor, they went and they looked at some of the different historical landmarks because there's so much history at Old North, and it's a great place to walk through. And the expectation was people like cemeteries and learning about history. Concord residents are very history centered. That video just keeps churning out views. I think last time we checked it was at 4,500, 5,000 views, which for a local video about one cemetery is interesting that would take off. And then the other example I can think of is an event that Matt covered, which was the 90th birthday anniversary of the old Concord Theater. So they gathered Paul Brogan, Laura Conoy, Steve Dupree were on stage talking about the Concord Theater, but then bringing back the Bank of New Hampshire stage and the renovations. And it was a pretty standard event, something we record and we archive, and those are the things we like to cover. I'll tell you what, that even looking at this past week, the past couple weeks, it got into the algorithm and it just keeps getting views. Matt, you don't have a microphone, but how many views do you think it has? Come on, I put you on the spot here.
It's got to be like 5 or 6,000.
Like 5 or 6,000, which again, for a local video about, we have to be realistic that we're not looking at millions and millions of views, because we're not chasing, I could do a video about, Matt and I taste tested every type of Cheeto that there is, and then we reviewed it. But that's not really Concord centric. It's not really relevant. So that's when I circle back to like corporate media.
Right.
We're not chasing content that sort of that goes beyond our mission and our vision. And so those videos are great examples of, they're things that we love to cover. They're important to Concord. They're important to our history, and they also found an audience. Mm-hmm. And so those are good examples. In terms of audience trends, I will also say our viewership online tends to be about 60% to 40% women to men. Mm-hmm. It seems like, in terms of our content viewing. I don't know how in terms of Concord's demographic that shifts, but that always seemed interesting to me, that we have more viewership of women. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, how important is coverage of government organizations so that citizens are informed in Concord?
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget that if it weren't for Concord TV and our consistency, like not just the recording and the live coverage, right. We do the live streaming to YouTube, live to the channels of the city and the school board meetings, but also just the preserving of a reliable archive. That has been called back upon many times. Hey, we, especially with like a project like the middle school project, hey, remember we did that, public meeting about the Runlet Middle School in 2018. And if it wasn't for Concord TV, like maybe someone would have been doing an iPhone recording, and then where would it go? What would happen to it, right? So we're also sort of like keepers of this digital video archive for Concord in a way that other archive, historical society is more of a print, mm-hmm. The state archives more of a print material.
Right.
So we really are like archivists that even if there's a meeting that maybe didn't get a lot of views, there might be a zoning board meeting that had 75 views, and you go, okay, not a big deal, it's fine, it's out there, it's public, someone will circle back to it at some point for either confirming the minutes, mm-hmm. or if there's a case that comes back and they need to refer back to it. Mm-hmm. So for me, and I think it's kind of an unsung role of ours, is like video archivists of Concord's history. And that
right.
When you look at what Concord TV programming is, because you would ask Steve also about what do we
mm-hmm.
cover? What are events we cover? I really want anything that helps get a snapshot of what it was like being in Concord, the major things that happened, the significant events. What's something that can be a snapshot of what Concord was like and how we've changed over the years?
Right. So you had mentioned that franchise fees are what provide the basis of our funding.
Yeah.
In this day and age, there's this move for some to cut the cord. And
yep.
what does that mean for Concord TV?
Yeah. So cutting the cord, and don't want to lay the guilt on people, cutting the cord is switching from cable television to just either internet only or other decisions that consumers can make. And that is a choice that Concord residents, when you're looking at your budget, you go, cable has continued to get more and more expensive. We all know that. But when you cut the cord and when you cut cable, your household, that part that Comcast or BreezeLine would pay into a system doesn't exist anymore. So that pool of money being collected by the city of Concord, and currently Concord TV receives about $280,000 of this pool, which equates to about 36% mm-hmm. of what is collected by the city of Concord. But those numbers keep dipping in terms of what is being collected because people are cutting the cord. So for folks to know that if you're a supporter of Concord TV, typically the cable franchise fees are what were the funding model for Concord TV. And that a lot of folks, like if you're just watching Concord TV on digital, that is a public service. We're happy to do it, but you're not paying into the system. But
so viewers are accessing our content, but not through cable.
Yep.
Is there? There's no way of really getting funding through that type of access that's not through the cable?
Yeah, that's also a really, really, really good point, because the terminology cable franchise fees from that Communications Act does not give wiggle room, it can't be used for internet revenue. So a question that I've been asked by other people is, well, couldn't the city collect cable franchise fees from like the internet revenues? So if I pay Comcast for my internet, you know, that 5% of those revenues, can't the city collect that? That is not how the federal law is written. There is nothing in any type of state law that allows for that. I will say, Steve, that in Massachusetts, there is in the state legislature, as of earlier this year, kind of stuck without, it hasn't made forward momentum, but Senator, I believe his name is Ed Markey, had been a big proponent for, and other state legislators pushing for an internet franchise fee, modifying and codifying on state law that they could collect internet revenues for PEG access media. And that has not gone all the way through. But that at least was made into legislation in Massachusetts. Now, on the other hand, there's another potential solution which Vermont has been exploring in their legislature, and that has also hit some snags, which is the concept of, instead of the franchise fees applying to the internet service provider, the ISP, of actually having a 5% franchise fee for the streaming companies. And I'll go ahead and name them, and then they'll yank our video down. But you know, we're talking about the Disney Pluses, the Netflixes, the Amazon Primes, to kind of say, in the spirit of when cable franchises were created, hey, you guys are creating this national and international programming that doesn't really do anything content-wise in our own communities. You know what I mean? Netflix doesn't have a video about Concord, New Hampshire, right? They were met with very, very specific lobbying. There is a lobbying group that is the combination of all the streaming companies, which you can imagine how powerful that type of lobbying is. And so even in a state like Vermont, that lobbying was met head on, calling it a tax against residents, which, again, to also clarify, cable franchise fees are not a tax. It's not the government taxing you. It's not a tax. So those are a couple of the potential options. The bad news, Steve, is nothing like that looks like there is anything on the statewide level of that kind even being floated. And I don't think in the current environment that is likely. And then also on the national side, it doesn't look like the FCC would be friendly towards anything like this as it currently stands. So we're dealing with declining cable franchise revenues. So I think the fact we're sitting here, Steve, is sort of going, you know, we're not related to Corporation for Public Broadcasting, but to also amplify, we have our own funding challenges going forward. And yeah, so I don't know if that even answered your question, Steve.
I hope it does.
I hope it did.
But in a way, we serve so many people, so many organizations, and you think it would be fair to say that the city of Concord is really supportive of our mission?
Yeah. It's a great time, Steve, with you mentioning that, and it can't be understated enough. The city of Concord, the city council, the city manager, Thomas Bell, have been great community partners. They've been supportive. They see the value. We've been able to demonstrate the value of our services through our annual reports and through just good, communication lines. And then I do also want to mention the Concord School District, who provides us rent-free space at Concord High School. Not currently, but they accommodated us at Abbott Downing Elementary School. So both entities see the value and the public service of ConcordTV and about community media. So the city has been very receptive to working with us and supporting us from a funding standpoint, and the school district from a providing locations where ConcordTV is can be this physical space. Because as other stations have found out, I think I was just hearing about one in Massachusetts where their budget challenges force them to close their location where they rent, they lease a space, and they just announced the other day they're closing up there and going to kind of a hybrid model, and while they figure out where to go. So it can't be understated enough that it really is a mutually beneficial partnership between our three entities.
So one of the things I was going to ask about is we have so many people who come into Concord on a daily basis. I saw some number saying that our population doubles every work day. And in our vision statement, we talk about greater Concord community. Do we just stop at the boundary of Concord, or do we sort of spread out a little bit, or?
Yeah, that's a great point. Historically, because the cable franchise fees being collected are from Concord residents and Pennacook, and that the funds are appropriated by Concord City Council, we have been pretty careful, and continue to be, I would say, to make sure that Concord residents or Concord supported, like anything that we're taking on has a tie-in to Concord. If you're using our studio, you're either a Concord resident or you work for a Concord organization. Certainly there's instances like we work with nonprofits that are based out of Concord, and their executive director probably lives in Pittsfield or lives in Barnstead or something. We're not checking IDs going, you don't live in Concord. But everything we do has to have some tie to Concord. And I'll give you a good example too. The Habitat for Humanity, I almost forgot the name, they do projects all across the state, and I was talking with them about doing some sort of a video feature at one of their homes that they're building, but looking at their Concord projects. Just because I'm still very careful about not sending our staff out beyond city limits, because we don't get funding from Pembroke, we don't get funding from Loudoun or from Boscawen or from any of these towns. The bummer about that, and if I had been around this organization in the late 90s or early 2000s, I would have really pushed, I think, for including those other towns and encouraging them to pay into a system, because there are no public access stations in any of the towns that I just named for you. In the greater Concord area, there is no other public access station.
But you find that residents of those communities do access us?
If it's relevant to Concord, so a lot of them who work for these nonprofits, it's tricky for me. If there's a nonprofit that isn't based in Concord, it's tricky, but if they serve Concord, then, so we'll have a statewide nonprofit that comes into the studio and they serve, let's say they're a Merrimack County based nonprofit, then we can work with them.
But it always seems that a lot of our programming is of interest not only to Concord, but to the greater Concord community, to the state, and to the region.
There's absolutely, there's the responsibility of us recognizing that we're in Concord, and a lot of these things that happen, we're seen as the leaders of the state. And so we do work with an organization which, I don't know if we talked about this before, but you might know, Steve, there is actually a coalition of New Hampshire community media stations that we do content sharing with. And so we're all in communication. So if there's, in Bedford, if Bill down in Bedford produces something that has statewide importance, they make that available for the rest of us to share content with. So we certainly have had videos and presentations and events, concerts, things like that we've shared statewide. So, again, I don't know if that answered to your original point, but to your original point, it's too bad these surrounding towns, they didn't invest in public access media. So they're in an alternate reality Concord TV, you could have had, where you're serving all the towns and receiving funding. I say all the towns, the ones that all border Concord, this accepted greater Concord area.
And all these communities do receive franchise fees, correct?
Yes, every town is and I'm not the full expert on how the franchise fees work, but my understanding is every town is able to receive up to 5%. There could be in a crazy world where they decide not to, but they would be turning down revenue from a cable operator. Or if for some reason there's no cable operator in their town, then there's no cable franchise fees. But most towns, my understanding would be that it just is going into their general fund and might be used to repair some of the telephone lines and some of the infrastructure that the cable companies use.
I don't know if it's, would you be welcoming other communities if they were looking to participate? Or?
I think for our board, I think that would be a worthwhile discussion and see what towns are interested. But again, the discussion is happening so late in 2025 that with cable franchise fees on the decline, you could jump into serving, co-serving with another town and look at the same exact, with that funding model on the decline. So really, if that had been a discussion in 2000 to 2005, I think as an organization looking to grow, that would have been a great place to do it. And now cable franchise fees are on the drop, and so you could end up a lot of trouble for not much revenue generating, unfortunately. But if any towns are interested, if any of the town managers are listening and they want to talk about it, we have increased our presence in Pennacook, and a possible collaboration opportunity is with the Merrimack Valley School District, which not all their schools are in Concord, but they have the Merrimack Valley High School, Pennacook Elementary School. They have schools that are in Pennacook. They are part of the city of Concord, and so that would certainly be something. We've talked with them, and I think there's some good potential that we could look forward to with that. So I think the other thing when it comes to collaboration, Steve, would be us just working with other nonprofits. One of our biggest strengths is our relationship with the nonprofit sector. So whether it's the Chamber of Commerce or Fellowship Housing or the Boys and Girls Clubs of Central New Hampshire, I could go on and on and on with these organizations that we work really well with, that we help amplify what they're doing through our resources, and they're really big advocates for us in the community.
One thing I noticed if you go to our website, you'll see underwriters.
Yep.
And the question sort of begs the answer: how important are underwriters to us?
Yeah, they have been huge, and that's going to be one of the ways that we fill funding gaps. Is going to be underwriting, where unlike advertisers, there's no promise of anything content-wise. What they're doing is showing support for ConcordTV. They get their logo on our website, on our newsletter that goes out, social media shout-outs. And we have terrific businesses. We've actually stepped up our sponsorship game. But I also hope that our viewers recognize those organizations and thank them for supporting us. And I don't want to forget any names, so we're gonna end up just I have a slide with, because we just got 2 more since our last board meeting, so we've been stepping that up a little bit. That's going to be crucial. So, and then also if there are local businesses, or if you know of a business that it's good exposure, we get good viewership, it's a good deal. Our base sponsorship has been $500. We do have $1,000 and beyond packages as well. But even for small businesses, it's a good way. And I like to say we're similar to C-SPAN, that the people who view ConcordTV programming are people who love their city, love their community. So you're not reaching millions and millions of people per se, but you're reaching your audience. And so our underwriters, they don't get a full commercial, it's just their logo, but I think it's a great value. I'm biased.
They must consider it a great value, otherwise they wouldn't be an underwriter.
They do, and we have a couple new ones, but I'm really excited that a couple of our business underwriters, it's been multiple years. I do want to give a shout out, probably I would say our key sponsor has been over the years. We'll put the slide up with everyone, but Merrimack County Savings Bank, every time that I've asked, hey, we have this program, I went with them for our nonprofit holiday greetings last November, and I said, I need a sponsor just to we're putting extra time and resources, and they said yes before I even finished my sentence. They have, every time that we've needed, they've just gone above and beyond in terms of just being an underwriter for specific programs, and just really wanted to give them a special, I would say, as one of our key sponsors, they have been absolutely crucial. And again, if any business is interested, it's not a huge financial commitment, but it's one of the most important things you can invest in.
One of the other things is, to me, there's no barrier between trying to create content. And it's when I said that we are ConcordTV, the community can come in and create content.
Oh yeah.
And how easy is that to do?
Yeah, it's easy for Concord residents who want to do their own studio programming. It's as easy as just giving them kind of a station orientation. We have a couple forms they fill out to kind of have on record their contact info and who they are and everything. And then you can rent the studio out once per month. We have set a restriction just based on demand, because we have, depending on the time of year and who joins and who might be taking a break, between 10 and 15 shows, independent productions. But we also allow Concord residents to, take a training on using video equipment, and they can go out, record their own programming. and we will help them with editing and how to create a YouTube channel. We've done that with people. So it really is supposed to be this inclusive media, not closed off and not, so one of the best examples of community media is our video camps, which Matt does a great job running with Rosemary, who is a seasonal worker with us, who she teaches as her full-time job and then helps us over the summer, teaching kids how to use video equipment. And we've had our video camp kids go on to, have careers in media, to go to, communication, programs like at Syracuse and these other great programs. It's a great, potential where they could even come back and help us and become interns. And it's a great way for kids who are in like middle school age. Where else do you get to operate equipment like this, right? And to learn about not just the tech side of it, but what Matt and Rosemary are great is like the storytelling side. I know you and I care about that as well with film, and it's not just about just hit record and do it. It's about what's the purpose behind it. And so community media, that's, again, without us, that really isn't going to happen,
It seems that our funding model, in a way, is really sets us apart, but it also underscores our mission, how we deliver our services, our content, and how our viewers and how people actually reach us.
Yeah.
It is, it's qualitatively different.
Yeah.
And it is refreshing.
Yeah, I agree with that, and that's when I've been here for 12 plus years, is that when I didn't know that this existed, and so my reaction was, this is a hidden gem, like, holy cow, this is a hidden gem. And a lot of people say that too when they realize this exists and what the purpose is, and the way the media landscape and our national landscape continues to shift. I think having your local media, and I would just give a shout out too, like, for folks to not, support ConcordTV, support your PBS station, your local PBS, support your local newspaper, right? Because media's we're going to end up with media deserts, and if you end up with a media desert in the state capital, then what is that saying about the rest of your community? Already in rural parts of New Hampshire, you have what would be considered to be news deserts, and so I agree with you. It's refreshing that there is community media, and we fit the media landscape puzzle, but without the community support, somewhere down the line, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, you might be looking at no TV station, no newspaper, no radio station. So I think that should be raising the alarm for folks, for not just us, but for many different entities, that what is it, the line? You don't know what you got till it's gone, right? That a lot of people, it would just be disastrous for this community. So I think folks do need to step up and support. Yeah. Not too heavy-handed, I hope, Steve.
No, great, excellent. So that really takes me through the questions I had today for you.
Yep, and that's about it for my voice too, Steve. So yeah, but thank you for kind of facilitating this discussion, and thank you to the board for your commitment and your interest in community media.
Absolutely.